send someone a payment and it's after 4 p.m. and all of a sudden the Fed wire system's closed for the day. Or if you'd like to see confirmation of like whether or not the payment was sent, and that's like a closed door system where only the bankers can see whether or not the payment was received. And technology is now changing all of this. So now the power is back in the hands of the people. Bitcoin as the people's money is really shifting the paradigm, and it's really delivering a lot of value and a lot of good to a lot of people. And NFTs are another way where we're taking the power back and we're bringing it back to the artist, to the creator, and the NFT is doing that. And we all know that artists can make NFTs when they are creating a piece of digital art, and then that digital art can sell and they can still be attached to the artist when it comes to royalties. But this is a big deal, and this is something that one of our clients, who's an artist that had a couple of great music hits in the 1990s, is very acutely aware of the fact that because her songs and the rights to her songs were sold and repackaged and sold again, they're now kind of separated from her as the artist of that art, and better technology would have saved her from that fate. And so NFTs for artists make a lot of sense. And I think, Robert, from what I've heard in some of your previous podcasts, the reality is that we're all artists of our own life, and that we all maybe can benefit from this NFT structure. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
It's very, very much consistent with my favorite poem, right, by William Ernest Henley, that ends, "We are the masters of our fates, we are the captains of our soul." And I think that, with the way I see NFT, the way you described it, which is really illuminating and provocative, is that it's kind of a new way of disintermediating middlemen, right, and representation. And that's probably going to be true on many different levels. It's like taking a layer out of intermediation. And I'd love to hear Danish's thoughts on this also.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and John, you hit the nail on the head in terms of like payments and stuff. I was just at the bank today depositing money, actual cash, I don't handle cash, but I'm in the Caribbean, so I was just depositing some cash, and they're like, there's going to be a $20 deposit fee. And I'm like, hold up, you're going to charge me to put money in my own bank account? Like, how does that work? Who charges you a deposit fee on your Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever? It's silly. But on the topic of NFTs, I think, when NFTs first came about, obviously been in the industry for a very long time, when people just thought they're JPEGs, right? Like you're just buying JPEGs on a token or whatever sort of thing. But now I think people have come to realize there's so much more than just an asset that you can view in a browser. NFTs are music rights. NFT are creator rights. They're movie rights. They are actual ownership of the asset that is locked on chain and that cannot be reversed. And so there's so many more implications than just pictures. When just pictures on screen, right? So we've just like John, we're working with a couple of one of the companies I advise. We're working with artists and labels. Well, not labels specifically, just artists, and they're so excited that they're about to get back the rights from their label in 2 years, because then they'll be able to control it, give it to their audience themselves, and then earn direct royalties rather than actually having to, give away 95% to record label. That's one example. And then, NFTs are also access to events, they're access to panels, they're access to everything. So you can have like NFT tickets and all that sort of stuff. And then of course, you have each NFT is a unique piece of data. So, in tokenizing yourself or tokenizing, let's just say your future earnings, or tokenizing, actually advising another company that's actually working towards tokenizing future income of students they fund. So, you fund a student with specific NFTs, and you get their future income as a percentage of whatever their earnings sort of thing. And those are the really cool uses of, real life, real world implications of NFTs. And I think, personal data and user data is one of the use cases that NFTs applies to. I think it really is changing how people see what blockchain can do essentially.
Danish, I think it's so great that you brought up that example of individuals funding another human being's education and then getting a claim on their future earnings, because of course we saw this, the proving ground for this was in the play to earn gaming world, where a game like Axie Infinity, you could give a scholarship to help someone afford an Axie and then share in their earning potential that they would use that Axie NFT in game to earn, Ethereum or other cryptocurrencies, and then you would get a real world financial benefit from the scholarship that they would do in gaming. And actually, we've seen gaming is really a category where NFTs have exploded, and we think it's great. There's so many games that are so popular around the world, and these items that people compete for and that they purchase with real world money can now be sold and traded because they're digital assets, and they go in a digital wallet. They're NFTs, and they trade on OpenSea, and they trade on other different platforms. OpenSea sold $1 billion worth of items last month and the month before. So there's really quite a desire and quite a groundswell for people that want to trade digital items, not just JPEGs. To your point, it's evolving now, and it seems like there is no limit to where the NFC value proposition can continue to expand to.
So are you guys saying that, not in the not too distant future, celebrities and athletes are all going to kind of NFT themselves?
I think that's exactly what we're seeing happening. And the problem, of course, is that securitization of a future revenue stream, that falls squarely into the bucket of a security in the eyes of the SEC. And so in the United States, the SEC hasn't figured out how they're going to handle the fact that securities now are able to be produced, in an evening on a computer, and they can be sold worldwide. All of a sudden, the SEC's jurisdiction and their capabilities of keeping up with all of the different iterations of NFTs are both problematic for the SEC.
So this basically means that, it's not going to probably then only be athletes and celebrities, right? And people with lots of followers. It's going to eventually trickle down through society, where there's going to be an awful lot of people that have NFTs, and it's going to be tied to whatever it is that they want to digitally produce, right? So it could be things that have already been produced, or things, and if it's things that have already been produced, then I'm guessing that it's probably a utility. If it's things that that have not yet been produced and are a future revenue stream, I'm guessing that would then be a potential for a security. So there's going to be all kinds of lines of demarcation and delineation that regulators are going to have to deal with on this. But for sure, this seems to be a very, very rapidly growing trend. And I think it's very much in line with this whole concept of personal data sovereignty, because we're really talking about the value associated with digital asset that would be ascribable to both in the past and the future of an individual. Is that correct?
It's very correct, and it's a new paradigm. It's a very compelling and thought-provoking concept because, of course, there's it's ripe for abuse. It's if you were to take someone from a disenfranchised place and turn them into a doctor or a politician or an attorney, but then now you control that person because you have a claim to their earnings, like that can do slavery. That can definitely certainly run afoul of everyone's best intentions for having cryptocurrency be a positive in people's lives.
Yeah, hopefully they stay away from credit default swaps and stuff like that, right, on themselves. That could get really complex. Too confusing for me. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this, Danish? Do you think that this is really going to be a huge trend of NFTs for individuals and for their data?
I think there is a world where we will see individual data be NFT'd sooner than later. And I think because on an average given day, everybody produces so much data, and that data goes out, and that's used by Instagram, that's used by TikTok, that's used by Facebook, that's used by whatever. And a user doesn't have control over where it's used. A user doesn't get any of the revenue that they're producing, that TikTok's producing from or Facebook's producing from. Your profile's being sold to 1,000 advertisers who are paying, etc. Like that. I think people are, especially given in the Facebook Facebook context, given the whole New York Times, the Wall Street Journal expose of all the things that are happening there. I think it's becoming more apparent that your data is a commodity, or like your data is you are who your data is, really, essentially, right? And that is a product that you were sold. And I think people thought, oh, hey, the Facebook, Instagram feed is the product, or the Instagram ads are the products. Like, no, you are the product. You are essentially what they sell, right? I think that's what people are realizing now. And I think there's going to be a future where everything you produced will be NFT'd because you can control who accesses it. We're already seeing with people producing, I was just speaking to somebody who's producing a movie that is NFT'd, that if you get access to actually previews, special extra behind the scenes content, whatever the director or the movie company has produced is NFT to certain parts and certain pieces and all this sort of stuff. We've had record artists sell their records at $1 a pop. I forget which rapper it was, but he created a record, sold at $1 a pop, and sold 1 million copies, right? Like directly to consumer. I think that's just an iteration of users NFTing, people NFTing themselves. It's the output they produce in the NFT themselves, and we're already seeing it. And I think, there's going to be multiple iterations of it, and I think we'll see it within the next 10 years. Or sooner, if not.
As you said it when you said control. It's all about bringing control back to the creator. And that control might be that they want a royalty on their art as it's sold over and over again, or they want to not let Twitter or Instagram suggest different items for them. Many of us have suffered through the Gmail fiasco, where Gmail's reading our personal emails to our mom, telling them we'll be home for Thanksgiving and we'll pitch a tent in the yard if we need to. And the next thing you know, we're getting tents in our feed, and it's offensive, candidly, and it feels like overreach by big tech.
So wait a minute. So even like inventors, then I guess for patents, I follow a lot of patents, and do you think this might be the future of how patents go also? Potentially, instead of having to go through this whole big process that is very difficult to litigate and everything, is it possible to, make a patent process on an NFT and then have royalties associated with that for original content?
100%. I think something like NFT, something like NFTs are the biggest use case for it, because with an NFT, obviously you can attach all the legal rights, everything else that's included with it. You can code the actual content of the patent within the NFT, and you can assign that when that NFT is passed on to the producer or the creator or the manufacturer, whatever it is, if they are using it, the output of it, we already see it in. So, for example, the output of it goes to specific wallets or users or the creator or whatever, because even when you're in OpenSea, you're trading NFTs, for example. Each transaction has a royalty built in that goes directly to OpenSea. Or if the NFT is coded that way, the creator gets a royalty from every time it's sold. And I think that's the perfect use case. Like, you create an image, you create a piece of content on an NFT. This is how, there's this big thing of how the original artist is always robbed of the $100 million sale of their Picasso, right? NFTs solve it by saying you will get 100% of the original proceeds and 20%, 30%, 50% of every resale that goes on forever. So as long as it trades hands, that percentage comes back to you. And I think patents, legal work, real estate ownership, any of that will directly is just the biggest use case for NFTs.
Well, couldn't this change then a lot of how human beings work and interact? As I'm thinking about this, I didn't choose to be an artist by trade because I didn't think I could ever make any money at it. And there was no real mechanism to make money at it. But now maybe, I would have chosen, had I had this opportunity, if I were, back in my 20s again. I became an artist later in life. But if I were back in my 20s again, maybe I would have chosen a different life path.
Absolutely, yeah, Robert.
Absolutely.
Because now there's a way to monetize the thing I love to do. And that just seems to be that there's this mechanism also for NFTs potentially becoming a viable platform that could be a universal basic income, that doesn't have to be one of redistribution, but that could actually reward people for all their real talents and the things they love to do.
Yeah, only 17% of images online are getting paid a royalty for their use. The rest is just being no one's paying for these images, where the artist is not receiving any benefit from having created this art. And it goes right into memes, and it goes into short videos. There's a concept now of taking the any meme that goes viral, like Tommy bit my finger. I don't know if you've seen this one, it's amazing. But like, what if you could own a piece of Tommy bit my finger? And then every time that someone watch that, like there's an advertiser that's paying a royalty to someone to sit before or after that video, and that can go to the people that own that NFT and to the creator of that art. And Robert, you said the term disintermediation earlier, and NFTs stand very well poised to disintermediate royalty companies like Getty Images. And you could be an artist with just one picture once. And Polaroid's actually consulted with us informally about their desire to create a digital camera that will automatically attach an NFT to each digital frame that's captured. And that'll be happening in the very near future. Everything that will be uploaded to Instagram will be instantly turned into an NFT, so that the creator of this art will be able to benefit from its potential to go viral and become part of our culture.
It almost seems like the stuff that we're storing, right, on iCloud and stuff like that, eventually we'll have an option to NFT all of that. So it creates a giant personal blockchain market opportunity. Because I would want to put everything I do, when I make something as an artist, I will, post it or whatever, and I keep a record of it. In fact, I've used social media as a means to keep a record of all of these things that I do. But why would I not want to go ahead and blockchain those things? It just seems like a whole new trend.
You'll want to put a fence around all of your personal art, because as the internet showed us, once your artwork is out in the public domain, it's very hard to put it back in your private domain.
So I think we've got a question also. So Robin, go ahead and tell us about this question, and I'll go ahead and pull it up. And while she's doing that, let's see. What fraud controls are in place for NFTs? So I'll let Danish take that one first.
Yeah, there's specifically when an NFT is coded itself, it's like a unique token that only the creator can alter or creator can unwrap. Some of them cannot be unwrapped ever, because NFT technically is like I'm not a technical person, but it's a wrapper around data and pieces of information essentially. And the creator is the only one that can unwrap it or change it or whatever. So if you're buying it from the creator itself and then you pass it on, there is nobody who owns it that can alter it, right? So that's the secure element of it. And it's basically all on chain. If you know the source that's come from, obviously you want to know that you're buying, like Damien Hirst's work, and it's Damien Hirst's collection, and it's coming from his contract. That's the source that you need to know. But afterwards, if somebody's passing it around, nobody can pass you a fraudulent NFT because you can always track the original stamp back to the original creator.
Yeah, this is a great question, and this is actually very much of a hot topic item right now. We helped a client do a 10K minting of NFTs this morning, and almost immediately there were 3 fake listings for the NFT on OpenSea, because it's easy to make it look like you're selling an official digital piece of art, because you can take a screen cap, and the ability to determine visually whether or not it's real is very low. As the consumer, you have to very much be on guard against fake NFTs. The easiest way to determine a fake NFT versus a real NFT is to dig into the Blockchain Explorer and see the origins of where this NFT has come from and where the payment contract address is asking you to send payment to. Because if that payment contract address is not consistent with where the NFT was minted or a previous buyer of that NFT, then that's a fraudulent contract, and you're going to end up with a fraudulent NFT. There are cryptocurrency service companies that are sprouting up. One that I'm thinking of is called CXIP Labs, and they do NFT verification for this exact reason. So NFT fraud is a real issue. The easiest way to explore whether or not you're getting a real NFT is to spend time in the Blockchain Explorer, making sure you can trace the origins of the NFT back to the minting event, and or engage with a third party that specializes in reducing fraud in the NFT space.
So what we're saying then is that at some stage, all the artists and the people that would have their own NFTs for their artwork or intellectual property or whatever are also going to have probably their own blockchain to prove who they say they are.
Well, I think it's a responsibility for the creator itself to notify their audience that, hey, this is the contract address. It's going to come from the same, exactly what John mentioned. Make sure the contract from the origin person. So it's a lot of the high profile projects that are coming out now, put out on a Twitter or wherever else, saying this is the contract it's coming from. This is where you should verify, etc., and then trace it back to that. So even if you're buying a secondary NFT, during the NFT, you can trace it back to original minter. So people might not need their own blockchains, but it's not out of the realm of possibility where spinning up their own chains becomes like a one-click process. For example, and a person could say, hey, this is my own chain. It's compatible to, it's bridged to Ethereum, it's bridged to Bitcoin, it's bridged to whoever. A one-click create an NFT, and there you go. You can issue it. And then that way, you're the only one that controls that chain, which is arguably against decentralization a little bit, but at the same time, it's for ownership. But yeah, there's multiple iterations of it that can come around.
It's about control.
Absolutely.
You're right, Robert, that people having their own blockchain is a good solution. I mean, this is a good solution because that gives you ultimate control over your own data.
Yeah, so there's probably going to be, within this decentralized format and network, there's going to have to be some mechanism for individual centralizations just on proving identity, for example, right? And I think that's going to be somewhere that is going to definitely have some very high growth potential, I would bet. I mean, when you look at this for myself, I'm actually now thinking, geez, I probably better NFT my artwork soon before someone else tries to do it. And that's kind of an interesting concept I never would have thought about before until this question just came up. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to be concerned about. So there's another question here from Mon Cha, which is, sounds like social currency. If you don't have a ton of followers, how can making an NFT be profitable for you?
So I think it's all about the creator. It's not social currency. It's about what would you want the NFT to be and to do. And I think to make it profitable, I think the cost of creating and minting NFTs is so low that to make a profit from your work shouldn't be that hard. If you don't have a ton of followers, you can have like 10 followers and still, if they're interested in your work, they'll pay what you think it's worth, sort of thing. So I don't think it's limited to people who have hundreds of millions or thousands of followers. I think it's applicable to everybody. If you've got something that somebody would want to buy, you can easily make a profit from it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when you search and you're walking through OpenSea or searching through a different NFT gallery, like you're looking for the art that moves you as an individual, and it might be created by a famous artist, it might be created by a no-name artist, but because the cost of minting an NFT is very low, it's definitely not a marketplace that an individual one-time artist would be excluded from. It's very, very democratic in its access.
Well, I certainly envision a day where these digital asset marketplaces for these types of NFTs are going to just pop up, right? Where there's going to be a bid-ask situation, and just as you said, and clearly there will be some with probably some advantage because they're more well-known. But that doesn't mean to say that that other intrepid artists wouldn't want to be new upstarts that would come into it, just as anyone else starting new have to kind of show their artwork and build up a bit of their own, fan base, I guess, for their unique art.
Sure.
But this is providing a disintermediation so that there doesn't have to be these other royalty, taking aspects or representatives through the chain. And it basically brings it back and flattens the whole thing. So to me, I think it's very exciting from that perspective. And there's already a major marketplace for things like your data. Trust me, there's over 5,000 companies right now that purchase every year over $250 billion worth of data, right, that has been amassed up and is centralized and controlled by a very small handful of companies. And that's really the value, is that control of data. So if we can disintermediate the control of data and democratize the control, I think that's something that can then inure benefit back to, you know, everyday people throughout society, and allow them to be able to pursue their dreams and make their own NFTs. You know, another question I have for you then is that, you know, what is the implication then of things like quantum computing, right? We know that quantum computers are now available. Cleveland Clinic just took delivery of a 400 qubit quantum computer, and Harvard has a 250 qubit quantum computer. Now, what does that mean? So it's no longer just this sort of esoteric, off in the future possibility. These are here now, and they're likely here to stay. And we have even incredible experimentation going on with these quantum computers, up to and including the point of teleportation of photons, right, to satellites, right? And that's already happened in China. So the question I have is, do you think that quantum is going to be important, or to have a system that could safeguard, you know, against potential for fraud, et cetera, where someone could basically, you know, crack into a chain and break its security, is an important thing to make sure we have a safeguard for?
Data that's not protected is not valuable data at the end of the day, whether that's your balance in your bank account, or if it's your personal consumption patterns. Like, if it's open for all to manipulate and to change, then it's not valuable at all. So data is only as valuable as the security that protects it. Quantum computing is a risk, I think, to cryptocurrency, but it's also a very real risk to every other part of our economy that relies on encryption. So I think the nice part about being in the cryptocurrency space is that we're very much technologists, and we're like technology forward with our thinking. So the idea of adapting an encryption methodology to become more quantum proof is very much like par for the course for people in the cryptocurrency space. And I think the industry will take upgrades in stride as they're needed to compete against quantum threats. The rest, there's many other parts of Western society that rely on encryption and are going to have a lot harder time assimilating a new standard into their practices, in my opinion.
Yeah, so Don, what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree with John. I think quantum computing is, it's kind of funny that like an advancement can also be used for nefarious reasons and kind of, you know, be used to attack blockchain itself. But, you know, to John's point, we are an industry of technologists. It's born out of data. It's born out of, you know, really writing code. I think as quantum computing progresses, I think evolution in blockchain tech will follow or move in parallel, where, you know, you will have closed gardens which quantum computing cannot penetrate, or you will have specific blockchains that are the ones that are actually not able to or deter any attacks using quantum computing methods, sort of thing. And I think it will happen in parallel, and I think it will be all the better. I think it'll encourage our industry to evolve faster and be better
and improve. Right. I think that's one of the things that I do love about blockchain. You know, the two things I love the most about it is the notion that this is the first time that we actually have a governance system that both disintermediates, democratizes, and also allows for good governance without more representation or more government. So that has far-reaching implications across society that I think we are barely just trying to come to grips with. But secondly, I think that, you know, the best part about this industry as well is how rapidly it moves and evolves. And that evolution is something that is super exciting to witness and to watch. So where do you guys think the NFT market's going to be? I mean, if you were going to look in your crystal balls, right, in your crystal cube octahedron, where do you think that the NFT market's going to be over the next 5 years?
I think it gets a lot bigger, and because financial assets worldwide, $200 trillion in equities, $200 trillion in fixed income. We saw during the housing crisis all the rehypothecation that happened in the debt markets, and no one knew really where the original documents were. Blockchain and NFTs provide a better, more elegant solution to the very complex business of trading financial assets. So therefore, over time, I believe we'll see all financial assets move on to blockchains, and many of them will choose to be a non-fungible token. And so what are we really signing up for in this new future? We're signing up for a digital wallet that's going to be in our browser that we're going to be in charge of ourselves. And instead of letting Chase be in charge or Merrill Lynch be in charge, we're going to have our assets living in a digital wallet that we control. It'll be accessed in our browser, but it will be unplugged at night and kept on our Trezor or our Ledger. And in order to feel comfortable with that, we need to feel comfortable that the security surrounding it is the best, and it is quantum proof. And so that's going to be a growth industry, I believe, in helping participants in the digital world feel that they truly have the ability to adequately protect themselves from these threats. Because right now we lean heavily on, Merrill Lynch to keep our stock certificates safe, and we might rely on Brinks to keep our Picassos safe. And it would be great to be able to disintermediate these firms, but easier said than done, I believe. But I believe that the market continues to grow exponentially or logarithmically for the next 5 years.
Do you think certain blockchain platforms are going to be advantaged in this versus others? There'll
be strength in numbers. I think that's what we've already seen with Ethereum as it being the primary and most secure smart contract platform. The Bitcoin blockchain is the most secure payment layer ever invented. There's been 0 instances of fraudulent transactions on the Bitcoin network that lasted for more than 20 minutes. So right now, the largest, most well audited and well attempted to crack, but not been cracked blockchains are currently the safest blockchains in the world.
Danish?
Yeah, I think the NFT space is going to be possibly 10 times bigger in the next 5 years, if not more. We've seen NFTs existed when the concept of NFTs kind of came about, when I guess Ethereum and other blockchains kind of originally started, because everybody saw the potential of it, or the creators saw the potential of it. Now we've moved into a space where I think, especially in the last 2 months, where John mentioned that OpenSea's done $1 billion in volume, people are now widespread adoption of it is coming. And I think widespread, I mean, there's maybe 100 million people, including creators and artists, that are used to trading, accessing NFTs. I think it's so much bigger than that. You need half the population of the world could be on NFTs in the next 5 years. And I think it goes beyond just music rights, your pictures, whatever. It's, as I mentioned, if you're trading on E-Trade, if you're buying and selling stocks, do you actually own the stock at all? Or is it just a synthetic number that's sitting on your screen, sort of thing, right? That's what it could change. That you actually own that piece of stock. You actually have the stock certificate attached to the NFT that you can, we all learn about, you can walk into a company and, show them the share certificate, etc. That's what it could bring about. It could actually give you that piece of digital item that you think you own, but you really don't, because it's just numbers on a screen. You don't have $500 in your bank account actually physically sitting there that you can go and claim that your bank shows. That does not exist, right? So that sort of stuff, I think NFTs will change. And I think in the next 5 years, people will realize that, holding that piece of data on chain in your wallet is what true ownership and true rights are. And I think that'll make it grow bigger.
Danish, you raised one of my favorite future scenarios. We've been in crypto for 7 years, and I've never seen anyone naked short a cryptocurrency yet. Naked shorting is a big problem in the equity market. These small companies are trying to raise money.
Huge problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
A firm decides they're going to sell 1 million shares short, and there's only 500,000 shares outstanding, and it's illegal,
Exactly.
but it's not enforced. And that
Yeah.
never happens in cryptocurrency markets because you can't sell something you don't have, nor can you claim ownership of something that you don't have.
Exactly.
So it all happens on chain, and this is why we love doing things on chain, as we say, because the transparency and you're attached to your asset. And I'd rather lend money on chain to someone than lend money through the strongest guy, in the Italian district of Manhattan, because like on chain I can pull the asset back, and there's no one to send, there's no knuckles to break.
Yeah.
No, that's true. I was a CEO of a public company that had a pretty substantive naked short selling position that was going on. And it was about 25% of the overall outstanding shares of the company. And what we had to do is we had to request at the proxy that everyone actually showed proof of ownership of certificates. Now, naked short selling means that you're basically selling short an asset, right? You're selling short that asset without actually owning that asset. So you just put a short sale in, and you can play with your timing on margin in doing so. But as soon as you require that they actually deliver a certificate, then the whole game of cards is over, right? Because then it's like, they're going to have to come up with shares. And if they can't get people to loan them the shares immediately, then they get a margin call, right? And then they're going to have to cover that position. And that's essentially what's happened with things like GameStop and Robinhood, right? You get this huge short squeeze where, the thing with short selling is you could have infinite losses, right? When you buy a stock, you can make, you buy it at $5, it goes to $10, and you can make $5. That's great. But you're not going to lose more than the $5 you put in, right? Because you can make infinite money on one side if it continues to go up and up and up. But with naked short selling, you can actually lose more than the face value of whatever the stock value is. So you buy it at 5, right? And all of a sudden the stock goes to 100, you have infinite losses, right? It can keep going up and up and up. Well, this is not possible with blockchain. And what this has done is it's created, the way that Wall Street works, and it's not enforced, and everybody knows it, is that it's a house always wins, right? It's literally the house always wins. It's a casino where the house always wins. It is set up that way. I've taken companies public, and I can tell you on the NASDAQ, and I can tell you that the system is set up for institutions. It's not set up for individuals. They set up all the laws, the 33 and 34 Act laws are all been set up purportedly to benefit mom and pops, but actually they always get perverted to benefiting the large institutions. And it's just the nature of the beast. The entire quiet period for companies is a perfect example of that when they want to go to market and take a company public. All of this is disintermediated in cryptocurrency. The proof of ownership is already embedded, right, in the fact that you have the token. And that is a huge difference I don't think people understand. And that's one of the major reasons why you see massive appreciation in cryptocurrencies unfettered, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen it. It's not that it only goes one direction, but if you look at the trend line, if you look at Apple stock for the last 10 years, it's up around 1,000%. You look at Bitcoin, it's up 250,000%. Because you can't do naked short selling. And that is a big, big difference that I wanted to point out. And then, the other thing I wanted to mention is that there's a lot of market share. I just did an interview with one of the online magazines in the crypto space, and I'm not sure if it's been published just yet or not. But I'll just tell you, so I won't say who it is, but I'll just tell you that the interview was about market share and how it's shifting rapidly to companies and blockchain platforms like Polkadot. And so the question was, why is it that, and we were actually mentioned, Crown Sterling was actually mentioned in a NASDAQ.com article that came out on Sunday as being a good example of this, that, now we went on top of the Polkadot platform because Polkadot had the highest speed transactions. It had concurrent transactions, right? So it's not just, the proof of state and all the great history that we have with great, digital assets and tokens like Bitcoin or like Ethereum. It's also about speed of transaction that becomes vitally important. Do you think that this is also going to be an important thing? You know, as you kind of like balance these two things, is speed of transaction and concurrence, which means that multiple people can basically be on a node at the same time, right? Is that going to be an important factor along with, you know, quantum resistance in future blockchains for this NFT explosion we're about to see? 10 times is definitely considered an explosion in my book.
Yeah, I think speed is definitely a big aspect in you know, the future use of blockchain, or how, if it's going to survive, or within the NFT space as well. You know, I've worked very closely with Polkadot projects. I've invested in a few. You know, Gavin, I know the team there pretty well, and I think it has one of the biggest promises of succeeding, because it's more. I think people think of Polkadot as entire cities. Instead, Polkadot really is, like, the best analogy is Polkadot's like the bridges that connect various cities, etc. I think, you know, the speed and the protection it offers is great, and I think it's poised for success. I think that element is what makes some other chains also valuable. So, for example, Solana, as everybody's seen recently, had a big 2 months because people realized that, oh, you know, you can build a really high functioning, fast trading platform using Serum, using one of their, which is on chain for them. But again, Solana is like more centralized. Their server went down last week and they had to hurry to their one Amazon server and kind of do it. And I think Polkadot changes that a little bit, because you can set up your own node and you can set up your own Explorer and be a node in the system and kind of participate at the same time. And so it's like a little bit more decentralized. And I think that's where we're headed. And I think, yeah, I think speed will be important as a future aspect.
Yes, I mentioned this to Bloomberg in an interview years ago, that at a 10-minute block speed, you know, Bitcoin's maybe not the right way to buy a pack of beer at your local supermarket or coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, but it maybe is the right way to buy your tanker full of oil for $30 million. No one maybe minds waiting 10 minutes for that block to settle. You know, and if you think of Bitcoin as like a generation 1 cryptocurrency, and then Ethereum as a generation 2, I think the block speed on Ethereum is around 20 seconds. And then you look at generation 3 cryptocurrencies like Polkadot with block times of around 6 seconds. You know, now we're getting into where we need to be useful in our high-paced modern life. And there's other blockchains that go even faster. You know, if you're in a self-driving car and you want to talk to the car in front of you, I'd like to talk to you 100 times a second. And like that's special applications for special blockchains, but clearly speed has to be balanced with security. And I think that a blockchain like Polkadot and Crown Sterling, your token on the Polkadot blockchain is the 6-second block speed. Is that correct, Robert?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, like 6 seconds. I'm okay with waiting 6 seconds for a safer blockchain. I don't need it to go, you know, 10 times a second. If it's going to be a little bit safer at 6 seconds, I think there's a very much of a balancing act between speed and safety.
So what are you guys seeing out there as far as like exciting new projects that are going to be coming to market very soon that are addressing, you know, this NFT, the speed as well of being able to process transactions, concurrent transactions, and also addressing quantum risk, quantum resistance?
For me, quantum issues are very, very concerning to me. I think that we're going to have a day of reckoning in the not too distant future, where blockchains have to take a look at the impact of quantum computing on their security and upgrade their security. I spoke with the CEO of Marathon, and he's very concerned about quantum computing as well. And he said that there might have to be a second elliptical curve or a third elliptical curve added to the Bitcoin signature process to make for a more secure Bitcoin in a world of quantum computing. And this is a very, very influential person in Bitcoin recommending a change to Bitcoin's core code. So this is not something that I would recommend lightly.
So what projects or what companies or what new tokens that you know of are coming out that are really addressing or taking the lead on this quantum resistance, along with, you know, concurrent transactions and kind of a platform that can be used with NFTs very easily?
I mean, obviously, you know, there are not many that are combining all of these elements to solve the problems that we've just discussed here. Not many, but I think Crown Sterling being one, and I think it's one of the few that actually, when I look at it, it says it says what it does on the it does what it says on the tin, in the sense of like, really aiming to protect against the quantum computing element and giving you your data rights and ownership sort of thing. And I think we at FMFW are super excited to launch Crown Sterling, and I think people will be super excited to participate in the ecosystem. I saw you guys just launched Crown Sterling just launched the Explorer as well, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I think outside of Crown Sterling, it's really hard for me to identify one project that is addressing all 4 or 5 of the problems that we've kind of discussed, and that's why I'm kind of really bullish on Crown Sterling.
Yeah, we were also an early investor in Crown Sterling's token, CSOB, as you know, Robert. We believe the ability to protect your data is ultimately what gives data its value. And we also believe in Crown Sterling's higher mission that data sovereignty, or the ownership of data, is the property of its creator and not the property of a big tech company that can scrape it away from a creator's activities. I think that the fact that Crown Sterling is utilizing quantum resistant encryption processes is hugely important. And it matters to us when we're looking at blockchain projects that they have a plan for how to deal with quantum computing and the threats that brings to their blockchain. So I think Crown Sterling, given its quantum proof design and its expanding wallet that can hold NFTs and other digital assets, is a really positive, well-positioned platform. And we continue to tell our clients about the Crown Sterling platform, and we look forward to seeing the wallet being released, hopefully in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we're definitely very excited about it. We built this platform, and it's the first to use one-time pad as a state transition function. One-time pad is a very important and proven form of encryption that is based on information theory, not on mathematical equation. So mathematical equation-based encryptions are based on number theory. And I believe that quantum computers are going to be able to work through any number theory-based mathematical equation, because the nature of how they work, right? You have ones and zeros in binary code, but when you get into ternary, you get into quantum, you get into 1, zeros, and X's, where you have a superposition for, something could be either 1 or 0. It's kind of like when Terminator in the movie series was able to turn to like liquid metal, right? They could kind of morph into anything. And it's the same type of thing that you have with quantum computing. And it could even potentially operate independent of normal space-time constraints, right? Which is, if there's going to be ever a time machine in the future, it's probably going to be something that's a result of quantum computing, quite candidly. So I think when we think about it in those terms, the only way you could get there would be to use a non-mathematical, non-number theory-based encryption methodology, which is already proven. It's the same one that is used to protect nuclear codes, et cetera. But what we had to do at Crown Sterling was we had to innovate it from a practicality perspective, because it requires very long keys. So we had to find a way to innovate that and use a very innovative natural compression methodology, and still also adhere to all of the principles required in what's called the Vernum cipher. So Polkadot was an ideal platform for us, no doubt, because we felt it was the very best chain. But at the same time, our developers looked at it and said, we love it because we could customize the entire encryption layer. And that encryption layer becomes a critical aspect because, as you said, any data that cannot have a fence put around it literally has no value. So therefore, the encryption aspect of it becomes so important. And if you really look at what is it that backs the US dollar, there's only trust. There's only trust that backs the US dollar. There's no gold since 1971 and 1973 with the Bretton Woods Conference. There's been nothing that backs, from precious metals perspective. It's not gold at Fort Knox, contrary to still a lot of people's, incorrect opinions on this. It's really just trust, and that trust is broken down if the encryption doesn't work. So it really comes down to encryption.
Yeah,
data is backed by its encryption.
Supercomputers don't freak out cryptocurrency proponents at this point. But if you tell them, well, what if I had a supercomputer that was 10,000 times faster? They'd be a little freaked out. And that's exactly the types of magnitudes of speed increases that we're talking about with quantum computing. And they should be creeped out. Yes, there needs to be encryption methodologies that are not number-based programs. And I think that's really forward-looking from Crown Sterling, and I think that the entire industry will move there in the next 5 years. And I think Crown Sterling, from what I can tell, is the first mover.
Agreed. I agree with what John just said. I think the industry will have to move forward. It's not they can or they will. I think they will have to in light of what's coming. And I think you guys have the first mover advantage, and you guys are going to be great.
Yeah, your token is launching. Robert, can you update us on the date, or Danish?
It's launching September 30th on FMFW.io. Excited for it. Next week.
Very exciting, guys. Very exciting. And I really see it as a platform that I hope will help advance this new, approach to data sovereignty for individuals. And I see a day when hopefully it is as simple as one click and you've got your own blockchain. And that creates a whole new way for people to be able to monetize the things that they love to do. And I mean, hopefully my vision is that, we've been living in a world where all of us have been human doings for way too long, in my opinion. Several thousand years of human doing. Hopefully, maybe, if there's one hope, and I'm an eternal optimist. I met with Shimon Peres last time he came to California before he died. And he asked me to come out, and I drove up from Newport Beach to meet him up in LA. And I asked him, if there's any advice, what would you give me? And he was 84 years old. This guy ran for, president 3 times and lost, only won his last time. He was already in his 80s. And he said to me, Robert, the only advice I can give you is to be an optimist. Statues are never erected for pessimists. Statues are never erected for pessimists who call themselves realists. And he said, if you can remain optimistic, the things that you envision and hope for in society can actually happen, because that allows you to be the change you want to see in the world. And I fundamentally believe that and know that to be true, correct. So my hope is that we can move to a society more of human being rather than human doing. And I do believe that data has the potential. And as with anything, any new technology that comes out will always have a ledger of goods and bads, no doubt about it. You could say the same thing about social media. You could say the same thing about iPhone. You could say the same thing about any new technology. Even the car, right? I mean, it seems great that we would never think about not having cars now, but it also has had a big impact that's been negative, right? Clearly, greenhouse gases and everything else has had some negative impact on the environment around us. So there's always going to be pluses and minuses with any new advancement. But I think this new advancement, has incredible value, that we can go back to our roots of individuality and also be able to monetize our efforts so that musicians can stay musicians and, artists can be artists. And that is going to have potentially a very, very big impact on society in this new era.
We've seen, Robert, that other people don't take as good a care of someone else's personal data as that person would take care of their own. And so I'm very attracted to a future where we control our own medical records, we control our own identity data, and we decide who we share them with. And when we're done sharing them with that party, we can pull it back. And they can't lose it on our behalf because of their sloppy bookkeeping or poor internal controls. And that is a more utopian future, and that is built on top of blockchain, and it is built on top of data encryption.
It's interesting. Vitaly Buterin is here in New York, and he gave a presentation at this blockchain conference that's here in New York. And he said, it's not about privacy from his perspective. It's more about data hygiene. Data hygiene. I see a day when having your own blockchain is probably going to be a fundamental component of our data hygiene.
Absolutely. We know it's accurate that way.
So thank you, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time with me. Danish, have a wonderful day. I'm looking forward to next week on the 30th. It's going to be awesome. And very excited, John, and happy to be working with you and having you here on the show today.
Great. Keep up the great work at Crown Sterling, Robert. You guys are on the cutting edge of individual protection against data encroachment by big tech, and we appreciate your efforts there, and we think you're on the right side of history.
Agreed.
Thanks very much, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.